Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown slate between the Indianapolis Colts and the Baltimore Ravens, and what should be an interesting game. I'm not a fan of both teams when it comes to DFS because I'm not a huge fan of using Ravens players outside of Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews. Sometimes the wide receivers are a bit hit or miss, and the running game is an absolute no thank you for me on most slates. Then as for the Colts, it's pretty much Michael Pittman or bust for me, so having to do a showdown slate between both of these teams is going to be quite interesting, but it's football nonetheless. So I'm excited to break it down. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that if you want access to the spreadsheets, ownership projections, projection optimizers, data sheets, color coordinates, and so it's very easy to follow. Link can be found down below for that. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know this by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you sign over on PrizePicks, you get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100, so it's free money. Why not use it to your advantage? When you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think it'll be up for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. I do want to mention this probably won't be the best game out there. We only have a 46-point over-under. It's a 7-point spread in the Ravens' favor. They're also playing at home, so this should be a nice Ravens win versus that Colts defense who hasn't looked exactly great so far this season. But we'll start with Lamar Jackson, $12,600. And as I usually say, I don't go too crazy on the quarterback position in the captain spot unless it's a running quarterback like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, or Jalen Hurts, or someone like that. Well, we have the best one of them all, Lamar Jackson at $12,600. He is very expensive. But to be honest, I am going to be quite heavy on him in the captain spot. I usually say around 5 to 10%. Well, I don't mind being over 25% in the captain spot with Lamar Jackson. I just don't see how he's not the optimal captain by the end of the night. Yes, if a wide receiver goes off like Sammy Watkins or something like that, there's a chance that they could be optimal. But I have Lamar Jackson projected for around 8 more points than everybody else in the slate. Like I'm talking like around 25, 26 points for Lamar Jackson projection-wise. Carson Wentz is currently second at around 17, so he is by far the best play in the slate, at least in my opinion, although I think most people would have the same opinion in most projection systems. Like last night, there were so many players projected really close to each other: Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Stephon Diggs, where you don't really want to go too heavy on one of them being the captain spot. But Lamar Jackson, a step above the field here, so I feel very confident about him being in the captain spot for me tonight. I just don't see how he fails here. The Colts defense, like I said, hasn't exactly been great. They have struggled with the deep ball so far this year, and Lamar Jackson is going deep. He's averaging close to 9 yards per attempt, which is very good for him. Averaging around 70 rushing yards per game, which is a built-in near 2 passing touchdown floor because you get 4 points per touchdown, nearly 70, 80 yards on the ground, which is nearly 78 fantasy points each and every single game on the ground. Have a rushing touchdown per game, 6.6 yards per carry. And the Colts this season, 26 DVA versus the pass and 18th versus fantasy quarterbacks. I don't really think it needs to be said, but you can sign me up for Lamar Jackson on this slate. And Carson Wentz, $10,200. It's a kind of mid-pack matchup here versus Baltimore. 14th DVA versus the pass, 14th versus fantasy quarterbacks. They are allowing nearly 300 passing yards per game. But Carson Wentz is nothing special here, only averaging 230 passing yards per game. And it's just hard for me to get excited about this Colts offense. They're missing some offensive linemen, which is going to hurt. Only a 19.5 implied team total. With them being 7-point dogs on the road, they should be throwing the ball more often than they usually do. So, I mean, that's a plus for him. I think he's a fine cash game play in tournaments. If you're going to be underweight on Carson Wentz, I don't mind that. But projection-wise, he looks fine. I mean, really, he's just a safe cash game play is all I can say. In tournaments, I mean, yeah, you're going to want him in if you're pairing him up with some of his pass catching options, but I'm not super excited about the perspectives of Carson Wentz tonight. I mean, that's not to say I'm not playing him. I am. I assume he's going to be the second highest owned player in the slate. I'll probably have nearly half my lineups with Carson Wentz, but I'm not excited about it. So moving on to our lineup, like I said, I am going to be very, very heavy on Lamar Jackson in the captain spots. We're going to plug him in. I know it's expensive, nearly $20,000, but when someone's projected so much higher than everybody else on the slate, you're just going to bite the bullet and just jam them in there because a lot of points, more than likely, will be scored compared to the rest of the field. And then we'll plug in another quarterback because we are kind of going towards a shell cash game build here. And if we go this route, that leaves us around $5,000 per player, which we can make work because there are some okay value plays on the slate. Then moving on to the running back position, I'm not like super excited about both backfields here. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is the best running back play on the slate. Although with them being 7-point dogs on the road, offensive line troubles, and they just mix in a bunch of running backs, Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack, who, I mean, Jonathan Taylor saw around 50% of the snaps last week, Marlon Mack around 30%, and same for Nyheim Hines. Obviously, Nyheim Hines is going to be the main pass-catching option. Taylor is the most talented of the bunch, but he's just splitting carries and has a 7-point dog on the road at nearly $10,000. it doesn't look all that great. Like projection-wise, it's fine. I believe I have him third on the slate, right around close to Carson Wentz. But I mean, 14.5 rushing attempts per game, 68 rushing yards per game, 4.7 yards per carry. Like the guy's a good running back, 3 targets as well with a 10% target share. And the Ravens this season are 21st versus running backs, despite being 10th at DVOA versus the run and 6.5 catches per game. I just do worry about the potential game script because if the Ravens get up early on, it could be more of a Nyheim Hines game, and Jonathan Taylor is super expensive, and he's more than likely to have to get to the end zone for him to pay off. So if you think he's going to get into the end zone, great, go for it, but he does feel a bit steep in price for me. Not a fade or anything, but just I wish he was a little bit cheaper. Then Nyheim Hines, $5,600, played around 30% of the snaps last week. He is the main pass catching back in this offense, 4 targets per game, 300 receiving yards, and a 13% target share. Not too far away from Jonathan Taylor, but he's definitely going to be involved. He's also nearly half the price tag, so he does fit in the lineups a little bit easier. And he's just not a bad run back option if you're doing a full-on Ravens stack, just because he's going to be used in the passing game, which I assume the Colts will be throwing the ball quite a bit in this one at 7-point dogs on the road. Then Marlon Mack is only $600. He saw 10 carries last week. He also had 5 carries a couple weeks ago, averaging 7.5 rushing attempts per game. Isn't really doing much with it, but the guy back in the day before he got injured, like he got really injured really bad, was a pretty strong running back. $600 too. Even then, I only have projected for like a point or two, so it's nothing too considerable there, although he is worthy of a pump play, I think, in tournaments, but I don't think I'd go there in cash games. As for the Ravens running backs, I typically hate playing them because I just want the main running back on that team, which is Lamar Jackson. Tyson Williams kind of got pushed out of the rotation last week as he was inactive, saw 0% of the snaps. Latavius Murray played over 60%. Le'Veon Bell saw close to 30%. Then Devonta Freeman just saw under 10%. Latavius Murray led everybody in touches with 18 carries on the ground. I'm going to be honest, I don't really want to target any of these guys in tournaments. I wouldn't mind getting a little bit of exposure to them, but I'll probably be underweight compared to the field. In cash games, I don't really see a reason to target any of these guys. Then moving on to the wide receiver position, we will start with the Ravens group first, which consists of Marquise Hollywood Brown, Sammy Watkins, James Prochet, and Devin Duvernay, who's also a returner for them. You do want to pair him up with the defense to double dip on the points there. But looking at snap distributions last week, Marquise Brown just over 60%, Sammy Watkins over 70%, Devin Duvernay saw close to half the snaps, and Prochet just over 30%. Looking at target distributions so far this year, Marquise Brown, 7 targets per game. Sammy Watkins, 6.5, 25% target share compared to a 24% target share for Marquise Brown. Devin Duvernay, 9.5% target share and 2.5 targets per game. And Prochet, just under 2 targets per game with a 6% target share. I believe Tylan Wallace maybe played a snap or two. The volume is just not there, or the snaps for him to be counted on, despite him being only $200. So look at these Ravens wide receivers. I'm thinking Sammy Watkins is probably the best option here. Start looking at price points because I like Hollywood Brown in this. Like he's the deep threat in this offense, 31% market share of the team's air yards. And Sammy Watkins is not too far behind at 28%, but he's half the price tag of Hollywood Brown, and he's playing more snaps and he's getting similar targets. It's like, why not just go with Watkins here? Like I like Brown in tournaments, but if you're building cash game lineups, Sammy Watkins is just too cheap in my opinion. Like he is not too far from Marquise Brown's numbers. And he's on the field a little bit more. So I'm loving Watkins. I like Brown, but the price is very, very steep. Devin Duvernay, not a huge fan of him. The targets are just so low, and he's $4,000. Watkins should be more than $1,000 more than Duvernay. Like they are definitely pretty far apart in projections. So it's kind of a weird pricing on Duvernay in my opinion, unless they're just accounting for the fact that he's a returner as well. Then Prochet, $1,000. You might get a target or two, but a 6% target share. Not something I want to really bank on too much. And then moving on to the Colts group here, we have Michael Pittman, $9,000, Zach Pascal, $8,200, Paris Campbell, just under $4K. Then we have 2 punt options in Strachan and Ashton Dulin, both at $200. And looking at snap distributions last week, Michael Pittman, the wide receiver 1, saw close to 90%, Zach Pascal right around 85%, Paris Campbell about 45%. And then the punt options, Dulin saw close to 20%, and Strachan just under 10%. So the guy you want in this offense, it's going to be Michael Pittman. Zach Pascal is obviously an option, but everybody else, it's kind of just distributed everywhere between running backs, tight ends, and Michael Pittman. So everybody else is picking up scraps for the most part. Pittman is very interesting, though. 26% target share in the season, which leads the entire group here. 69% weighted opportunity share, and over a 41% market share of the team's air yards. In the Ravens this season versus wide receivers, looking at the target distribution, Michael Pittman over 8 targets per game, which equates to a 26% target share, and over a 41% market share of the team's air yards. Zach Pascal just over 5 targets. That's a 17% target share, very close to it. Paris Campbell under a 10% target share and over 2.5 targets per game. Then Ashton Dulin, not even a target per game, and a 1.46% target share. So mainly what this is saying is that you want Michael Pittman, and everybody else is pretty much picking up scraps because they use the running backs a lot in the passing game and use the tight ends quite a bit. So it's pretty much Michael Pittman, those guys, and then everyone else is getting scrapped. Although Zach Pascal, over 5 targets per game is not to be ignored because he is involved, and he's a red zone threat as well. So then moving on to our lineup, I would love to fit in Brown. I'd love to fit in Taylor, Pittman, Zach Pascal, but I just don't think it's going to be easy to do so in this lineup. And we still have tight ends, defenses, and kickers to talk about. And there's a tight end I really like on this slate who's kind of mid-price. I'm sure you guys all know who it is, but I'll save the spoiler alert for when we talk about tight ends here very soon. The problem is if we try to fit in Brown, that leaves us $3,300 per player. That's just not going to look that great unless you use a $200 punt option, which I don't really want to on this slate often. Jonathan Taylor leaves you a little bit more money, but it's still under $4,000 left per player, which I don't think looks that great because we still have 3 spots left. If it was like the last spot, yeah, you could throw a kicker or something like that in there, but don't feel too great about that. So we're going to dive to the mid-range here. And like I said, my favorite wide receiver from a point per dollar perspective is going to be Sammy Watkins on the slate at $5,800. Like, he's getting consistent volume every single week. 8, 7, 7, 7 targets and 4 catches each and every single game. Fantasy point output hasn't exactly been amazing, but it's not terrible either for the guy. It's only $5,800 on a showdown slate. So we'll plug him in. It leaves us over $5,000 per player, which makes things a little bit easier for us compared to just using one of those high-end options. And then moving on to the tight end position, we will start with the Ravens, which basically consists of Mark Andrews and really nobody else. Eric Tomlinson does block quite a bit. Josh Oliver sees a few snaps here and there, but I don't really want to bank on that. So Mark Andrews, I love him a lot. If you're playing cash games, feels like a cash game lock in my opinion. One of the most heavily targeted guys on this team. Him, Sammy Watkins, Marquise Brown, what the passing offense kind of revolves around. And outside of Hollywood Brown, these guys are not that expensive. Like Sammy Watkins, we just plugged him in. He's below 6K. Mark Andrews in the mid 6K range just feels a bit too cheap in my opinion. I think he could easily be around $8-some thousand on this slate, and the fact that he's not just screams value, in my opinion. So my optimizer is jamming him in everywhere, close to 6 targets per game, over a 21.5% target share, 45% weight opportunity share, nearly a 20% market share of the team's air yards, and 8 out of 10.4, which is pretty darn good for a tight end. So loving Andrews on this slate. He's just a little bit underpriced in my opinion. Then for the Colts tight ends, we have Mo Alley-Cox and Jack Doyle. And I guess we also have Kylan Granson here, who played on 40% of the snaps last week, but he's only averaging half a target per game. The main pass catchers are going to be Mo Alley-Cox and Jack Doyle. And if we're looking at snaps last week, Cox played around 70%, Jack Doyle around 30%, but both guys will be involved in the passing game. And that price tag for Jack Doyle is not bad at $2,600, averaging 4 targets per game, nearly 30 receiving yards and 2.5 catches, 10.95% target share, which is actually higher than Mo Alley-Cox, and he's about half the price tag. Not saying Mo Alley-Cox isn't the better projection play because he's on the field more, and he did have a nice game last week. But I like that price tag in Jack Doyle. You're probably going to be throwing the ball quite a bit because I imagine they're going to be trailing in this game. And the Ravens are dead last versus tight ends so far this year. Although you got to keep in mind who they played. They played Darren Waller. They played Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, and Noah Fant so far. Like, that's a gauntlet of tight ends to face. So, yeah, I'd hope they're the worst team versus tight ends so far this year. Not sure if that's going to keep up throughout the entire season. But Jack Doyle, if he gets us a few catches and falls into the end zone, not a bad value play at $2,600. For the defenses, you guys know my stances there. I don't typically captain defenses or kickers. I'll play a little bit of them in the flex spot. Last night, I was very low in the defenses. Thought it'd be a shootout, which it was a pretty high-scoring game. But the Bills' defensive touchdown right through Tyreek Hill's hands. I hate that kind of stuff. It's just like you lucked into a bad play. Like, I just hate defenses in fantasy because just dumb luck stuff like that can win you a showdown slate, which is, it's a little tilting there because I did not have much Bills defense whatsoever. Like 5% max I had it at. I'm not even sure if I got any at all. Although if I'm going to play defense on the slate, it's going to be the Ravens. The 7-point home favorites facing Carson Wentz, beat up offensive line. Wentz obviously is prone to having bad games here and there, so I'm not like super scared of the Colts offense. The Ravens defense, not a terrible play, but again, it's a defense, so they don't really offer you too much upside unless they score touchdowns, which is not something you can usually bank on. And then the Colts defense, I like the Ravens a lot. So I really don't see a reason why I'd want to play the Colts, probably like a max of 5% in my lineups, and I would not captain either defense on this slate. And then as for the kickers, these are actually 2 of the better kickers in football. Justin Tucker obviously being the best, hit that 66-yard game-winning field goal versus the Detroit Lions in, I want to say, week 3. Yeah, there should be scoring opportunities for Justin Tucker, having the higher team total. So if I had to pick between the two, I'd say Tucker, but Rodrigo Blankenship's a little bit cheaper, $3,600, and he's a good kicker in his own right. If the Colts are able to move the ball a little bit, but their drive's still out around the 30 to 40 or 20 to 40 yard line, could be plenty of field opportunities for Rodrigo here. So kickers are fine. They just offer you very low ceilings, but their floors are decently high. So moving back to our lineup to finish this off, I do want to mention, don't just steal this up. I'm making it on the fly for you guys to see what fits and what doesn't. Like, it's not a guarantee that I end up using this lineup. 150 tonight using the optimizer, so we'll see what happens. Maybe this lineup shows up, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's the optimal. Who the heck knows? I'm just trying to see what fits with you guys together. So we're around $5,000 left per player. I think you guys know I want to fit in Mark Andrews, $6,600. It seems a bit too cheap in my opinion. So it's going to leave us $4,200 left for our last two players, and there's a couple ways we can go. We have Moelle Cox, we have Nyheim Hines, Devin Duvernay, who I feel is a bit overpriced in my opinion. You have the two kickers here. You have Campbell, you have the Colts defense, you have Jack Doyle. And I said we might go with a running back at the end here if I feel like it'll fit well, and I think it will if we went Nyheim Hines. $5,600. He can be a bit more hit or miss, but there should be a positive game script for him to see a handful of targets. And in the games the Colts lost, he scored 18.9 and 14.2 fantasy points on 8 and 6 targets, and I feel like they're going to be playing from behind here, so I don't think this is a bad spot for Nyheim Hines, so we'll plug him in. Pass catching options, he actually does correlate well with Carson Wentz, and that's going to leave us $2,900 for the very last spot. At the very top here is Jack Doyle at $2,600. Is he an exciting play? No, but he's going to be on the field. He's going to get a handful of targets, hopefully 4 in week 1, 8 in week 2, and that's kind of trailed off at 2 and 1. But just for the sake of this lineup, I don't think it looks terrible. So we have Lamar Jackson at captain. You got Carson Wentz. You got Sammy Watkins, Mark Andrews, Nyheim Hines, and Jack Doyle. If you want to bypass Carson Wentz, you could take him out. You could throw a guy like Pittman in there. That's going to leave you $1,500 extra salary remaining. If you want to upgrade from Jack Doyle to get a guy like a kicker or something, I wouldn't hate that. But there's multiple ways to go, so it should be a fun slate despite both these teams not being the most fantasy friendly. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video, so I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become a official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for all the extra content you'd ever need. I do cover other sports as well, including NASCAR, NBA, and the MLB, so if you want to check them out, you know where to find it. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, just you versus projections, and as of right now, if you're new signing over there, you get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck tonight. I'll see you in the first look video tomorrow.